Hello there, Biakamuso desu, and welcome to my review of Silent Hill F. I want to start by saying that when I saw the first announcements of this game, the first teasers and trailers, I was really excited. I know that Silent Hill is a Japanese game who has always had this more Western kind of visual. I was really excited for a Japanese focused horror game because I always like those. Even though I haven't really played, so I've played Japanese horror games, but not really ones that focus on Japanese folklore, I was really excited for this one. And I was really excited, especially because of the title. Because Silent Hill F, the F specifically, has a very specific design. Now, I could be wrong, and there could have been just a random choice, but when I saw the F, it immediately went for me towards music. So the F could be representative in music, that specific F, for two things. One is a dynamic indication, which is the dynamic for forte, so the intensity of music. It's not the most intense, so forte means that you're gonna be playing loudly. And forte is not the most loud that you can go, because then you have like the double F, which goes to fortissimo, and triple F as well when you want to be very, very loud and dramatic and aggressive. So there's like levels to it. But forte is intense, is playing in an intense way. And then you also have the music reference to the Fs in string instruments, such as the violin, for example. So I was really curious because I thought, well, this is not a number, it's a letter, and it's a very specific one at that, so I was really excited to see its connection to music. So imagine my surprise when I come to the conclusion that this has nothing to do with music. I know that in the beginning there were some interviews with the creators of the games where they kinda left it open what it was supposed to be about. Like I said, Forte is about intense, and they said it could be related to that intensity of the theme, but honestly, I don't see it. I think if I had to choose like an intense theme, I would say that Silent Hill 2 is more intense than Silent Hill F, but I guess that's an opinion thing. I also know that they were trying to be vague because it was in the beginning and they were avoiding spoilers. I don't know if there's any confirmation of the inspiration or the reason why they decided to call it Silent Hill F. I heard that it was also because there's a lot of symbolism through flowers, and they suggested that the F could stand for flowers, but were they thinking in English? Because it doesn't make any sense for a Japanese game that is Japanese centered in theme as well to have an F for flowers. But I digress. I just wanted to share that just from the title and the theories that I was coming up because of that specific F, I was, even though the soundtrack is great because it's done by Akira Yamaoka and I really like his work, I don't think it's as memorable as Silent Hill 2, but I do think it's a very good soundtrack. I don't see why they decided to use what, in my perspective, is a musical reference, but hey, I may be mistaken and they just liked the way the aesthetic worked for the letter. Silent Hill F is based on the Silent Hill lore. I'm guessing. I still don't know a lot of the Silent Hill lore because what I have is my understanding of what happens in Silent Hill 2. So you may hear me talk through this review about the Silent Hill lore, but please keep in mind that my perception of what is Silent Hill is more or less solely based on Silent Hill 2. And therefore, if you want to maybe compliment and teach me a little bit more about what you think is the lore for Silent Hill, feel free to share in the comments. I do warn you and I do beg of you, please don't share spoilers because I still haven't played any other Silent Hill, and I would really appreciate if you don't make, specific mentions. So Silent Hill F is in this, I cannot say the year exactly, but it's more of a like a few decades ago, around the years 1950s, if I'm not mistaken. And it follows Hinako, who's a student. Actually, most of the characters, with the exception of her parents, sister, and Foxmask, are all students, so her group of friends are students as well. And I know this is debatable, but I will get there. And suddenly, the town that they live in, which I don't remember the name, I do apologize for that, is engulfed in fog. And these very specific red flowers, I know they have a specific name, I don't remember it, I will share the information, start appearing everywhere and taking over the city. Right from the get-go, the flowers' appearance kinda left me baffled. I know it's a very Japanese element because, if I'm not mistaken, those flowers are associated with death. Okay, they decided to add an extra flair to the fog. That's fine. Now, I do feel like that the fog is just a way to mention Silent Hill, because I don't really see any of the other elements associated to Silent Hill making an appearance here. Yes, the monsters in design are very Silent Hill-like, but we could also argue that they are very Japanese-like. The long hair to make references to all these horror stories focused around very long dark hair, the doll kind of design for some of the monsters, which is also very characteristic of Japanese horror. I would argue that the monster that looks more Silent Hill-ish is this very huge blob of a monster who also has a very clear symbolism related to the theme of the game. But yeah, it's very grotesque, it's very annoying, and then you have also the monster with the, I would say, more, I wouldn't say it's a Silent Hill monster, he's a pain to deal with. And I would associate him more with also Japanese folklore, but he was very tough to fight. So we follow Hinako and her group of friends, Shu, Rinko, and Sakuko. So let's try and go by parts. You don't really know a lot about Hinako. Hinako seems, for let's say half of the game, like a blank slate. You don't get a lot of information. You know that she is a little bit tomboyish because she likes to play with guys. She's shunned by other girls. She is also shunned by the boys. She has a best friend in Shu, and she also has her girlfriends, but they have like a very tense relationship. And Hinako is trying to she doesn't want to adapt because she wants to do the things that she enjoys, but at the same time, she regrets that she's not able to fit in amongst anyone. So this game is very much about gender roles. And then you have Sakuko. Honestly, I didn't understand Sakuko's story. I understand that her family was related to the temple of the town, and I don't know, Hinako talks about her wanting to open a candy store, but then she also mentions that she wanted to, because the temple was abandoned, and she wanted to kind of bring it back into the heart and center of the town. It's kind of weird. I don't really understand Sakuko. And Sakuko is also, she spends most of her time calling Hinako a traitor or a liar. I was also kind of lost about that. I don't really understand what she lied or betrayed her about. I missed that. Even though I did 4 out of the 5 endings and I spent way too many hours in the game, that I thought it was not complex, but too convoluted in all the things that they wanted to tell. Then you have Rinko. Rinko is a much more straightforward character because she is interested in Shu romantically. She tried more than once to share her feelings with Shu, which were not reciprocated. And she is very envious of Hinako and her close relationship with Shu. And she clearly can see that Shu is interested in Hinako, even though Hinako doesn't really want to acknowledge that she also is interested in Shu. And because of that, Rinko really despises Hinako. She's like playing friends with Hinako, but she is looking for her first opportunity to stab Hinako in the back. And then you have Shu. Shu, like I said, is interested in Hinako. He kind of wants to break from being friends to becoming more, to deepen their relationship, but Hinako doesn't allow that to happen. And when I was exploring Shu's part, I also became a little confused because amongst the treasures that you need to collect for his puzzle, there was these drawings that he made. I don't know that if he made, if they were made by other people, and they were about bullying Hinako, so I was left a little confused because he's supposed to be best friend and partners with Hinako, and then I don't know, I was very confused about this information. And then you have a mysterious boy, which is Kotoyuki, and Kotoyuki is this boy that was helped and saved by Hinako, and that no one mysteriously seems to remember him. So, do be warned, this review will have spoilers as I go into more details about the game, and feel free to log out this very moment if you don't want to hear them. The game doesn't have a lot of build-up. You, as Hinako, go to meet up with your friends. It seems like Shu has something to say, but Hinako doesn't meet him alone. She ends up gathering all the friends, and as soon as they are together, fog settles in the town, these red flowers appear, and monsters spawn and try to kill them. The first to die to this threat in town is Sakuko, but she doesn't really disappear from the game as she continues on to have a whole puzzle dedicated to her and becoming a boss fight, which was, honestly, the design was very interesting, but I don't really understand why am I fighting. I also don't understand because in what I thought was Silent Hill is supposed to serve as some kind of penitentiary. So it's a place where people that have done wrong things go to kind of pay for their mistakes. And I don't really understand what Hinako has done wrong, because when I think of Silent Hill 2, I understand why every single character is in Silent Hill. They are victims, but they are also perpetrators of their own crimes. Like, James is a victim of everything that happened, but he also kind of put himself in that situation because of what he has done to Mary. Here, I don't really understand what Hinako has done wrong. I know that we have the first ending, which is the same for every single person no matter what they do in their first playthrough, which is the Red Wedding. So Hinako marries Fox Mask and she ends up killing everyone. Is that the reason why she's in Silent Hill? She's kinda trapped in a loop, let's say, because she becomes a sacrificial bride and has to kill everyone that she holds dear? I'm so very confused. Now that is something also about this game, is the amount of different folklore that they decided to introduce in this. So they decide to introduce, let's say, two religions. I don't know if that's the right term. I do apologize if I'm saying this wrong. So you have this religion which is the oldest thing. So the oldest object, the oldest thing around becomes kind of sanctifies and becomes the vessel for a god or for something saint. So you have this very old tree that becomes the representation of that religion. And then you have the new religion that was brought into this town, which is the religion related to Inari-sama, dedicated to the foxes. And you have these two religions kind of competing against each other. The fox religion needs a sacrificial bride to save the town from cataclysms and environmental crisis, because you have an ending where Hinako decides to run away with Shu, and the town is basically, I wouldn't say destroyed, but is very punished by these storms and whatnot, because she doesn't become a sacrificial bride. And you have these different things to do because you have different puzzles also related to these religions. I think it's too complicated. And let's talk about Fox Mask. I really like Fox Mask's design because of all the Inari-sama and fox folklore, but the fox needs a human vessel who ends up being Kotoyuki. And you have this whole information that there's a specific clan that is chosen to be the vessels for the fox god. And Kotoyuki was like a bastard son, but his mother really pushed him to be the chosen. And then you have this very specific moment that Hinako recalls where she saved Kotoyuki from a fox. And the fox was about to be killed because the village wanted to kill the fox, but Hinako also defends the fox. So you have the fox imprinting on Hinako and Kotoyuki also becoming friends and falling in love with Hinako because of this moment. And then later the fox chooses Kotoyuki because of his connection to Hinako to become the vessel, and he is basically spirited away so everyone forgets Kotoyuki existed. And then, of course, when he, as Fox Mask, needs to choose a bride, he chooses Hinako to become his sacrificial bride. You also have this room where you see different girls, and I'm not too sure if they are previous sacrificial brides, and Hinako is for sure one of them. I think it's just so many elements, and don't even get me started when at a certain point you're traveling with Rinko and Shu, and Rinko tells to Shu that he needs to wake up and that Hinako can't be with them because she's dead. How is she dead? Well, because she's a sacrificial bride, but she had a red wedding where she killed everyone. And then the red wedding is not because of religion, or not only because of religion motives, but because Shu was giving her a drug, because I don't really understand why, but Hinako suffers from some kind of headache. I don't know if it's due to an actual illness or because she has this trauma or thoughts that take over her, and the drug that he was giving her were making her more sick rather than curing her, and that also is suggested to be like the scientific reason why she went bonkers. It's so many elements. I wouldn't say that Silent Hill has a very straightforward, simple story, but I've never heard of a Silent Hill this convoluted. I just think that there are so many elements. It's just too much. And of course, a complex story can be interesting, but a complex story doesn't necessarily become a good story just because of its complexity. I don't know. I am so confused. I did 4 out of 5 endings. I did 3 playthroughs of this game. I played on the easiest difficulty because it's pretty long, and the gameplay, which is more Souls-like than I would have appreciated. It's like, fighting with James is not easy, but it was not this Souls-like that I felt that Silent Hill F became. And you can't really avoid the grind. At least in Silent Hill you could avoid the monsters if you chose to. Of course, there are always sections where you are supposed to fight, but I thought that this game kind of lost its horror vibe because there's just too many monsters to fight. There's entire sections where you just have too much fighting to do, and that kind of takes away from the horror element, because at a certain point it becomes a chore and an action game rather than a horror experience. I don't really have a very good opinion on Silent Hill F because I think all these elements kind of bring him down. It's not clear what they want to do with the story. It's not clear why these characters are in this purgatory. I feel like Hinako flips very quickly. I think they are trying to tell that Hinako has some kind of split personality issue. Because there's the Hinako that is with Shu and that is not understanding what is going on and is more innocent. And then there's the Hinako that accepts her fate as a sacrificial bride and is very, I wouldn't say obsessed, but she really likes Fox Mask and heeds every single word that he utters. So I feel like there's more than one Hinako, and you can even see that in different endings. Now, the final boss fights were pretty interesting because depending on your ending, you can either fight the monster version of Hinako as a bride, you can fight the fox spirit itself, you can fight Shu as a alien, I guess, or some kind of mecha, and I think that's all. I don't remember if there was another boss that I'm currently forgetting. And I don't really understand the steps for Hinako to become a monster. I will say that I was surprised that they decided to make Hinako a monster, because that's really different. I mean, yes, James was also a monster in Silent Hill 2, but not directly, because there's a monster that represents him. He doesn't really become a monster, but here you clearly see her becoming a monster. And I guess the gameplay is fun because you're overpowered when you're using the powers that you gain, but it also becomes suddenly too easy. I don't really like the Souls-like mechanic, but I'm glad that they didn't put you playing as Monster Hinako for long periods of time, because it suddenly becomes far too easy to take down the enemies. But I did enjoy it. It was a slight change of pace. And hey, the design is cool. I don't really understand the whole ritual and the specific changes we're going through, but I think she's becoming one with the Fox God. So, glad for her. And I think that's it. I don't think there's honestly, because I know the true ending, which is the only ending I didn't do, has maybe a better ending than all the others, because I feel like all other endings are not happy. They don't have a very good conclusion for Hinako, because if she becomes the sacrificial bride, she's mad that her life is ruined now to just be a wife. If you just take the first ending, she becomes a mass murderer haunted by the police. I don't think there are any endings where she becomes happy. You have the alien ending, which I don't know if it's very telling of what the game is supposed to be about, if it connects to the rest of the story, but hey, it's a meme ending that is present in most Silent Hills, so that was a short and fun one. I didn't really enjoy the gameplay. I think I much rather have a gameplay such in Silent Hill 2, because it becomes, I wouldn't say that the mechanics are bad, but it becomes very action focused instead of horror focused. At a certain point, the tension just disappears and you're left with the feeling of, okay, what's the next monster that I'm gonna have to fight? The design of the overall town, I've seen videos of people going through the streets of the place. It's very much like the original place, and I think it works very well. in this very claustrophobic sense, but at the same time not being able to avoid the monsters in a game where resources are scarce. I feel like it's a missed chance because I will have to. It makes the optional fighting not that optional. I didn't really connect with any of the characters, not with Hinako, not with Shu. I really don't feel pity or, I would say, strong emotions for any of them. I think every single person sucks, honestly. And I think the one I would feel is more innocent is maybe Kotoyuki, who ends up being a victim of everything, of all the circumstances around him. But I wouldn't say that I have also a lot of, I wouldn't really clear him, because his obsession for Hinako and his desperate love for Hinako has kind of led him to this position. And you do not see enough of Kotoyuki himself, since he's mostly possessed by the fox spirit. So I wouldn't say I've seen enough of him to really deem him as the favorite or the most innocent character. The soundtrack is very good, very appropriate. It has more of that Japanese feeling, which is appreciated. I wouldn't say that it's very memorable. Like I said, I do think I appreciate the soundtrack for Silent Hill 2 better, but this is a very good soundtrack, and Akira Yamaoka does a very good job at creating the ambiance needed for the game. The chase scenes were something interesting, albeit a little predictable. They are very linear, but hey, I still died and got caught, so lack of skill, I would say. I also need to mention the scarecrows as an enemy, because even though they fall in the doll category, the maze was an interesting place, and the whole puzzle. There were some puzzles where I was kind of stuck. I didn't really understand what they wanted from me, but I think the puzzles were pretty accessible. The scarecrows that they had, they are very creepy in their movements, and I know that they made a very interesting promotion with cosplayers, which worked really well. Everyone was creeped out, and so kudos for that. And I think that's it. I think the story has far too many elements, and they spend so much time digging, trying to make you understand the lore and all these elements, that they don't really focus on building the characters. At least I don't feel like it. So at the end of the day, I feel like I saw a bunch of Japanese folklore elements, but I didn't really connect with the characters, so I don't pity any of them. I'm honestly tired of dealing with them, and I just think it's too many elements for... I'm just focusing on learning more instead of being overwhelmed by the horror aspect of the game. I think it can be an interesting experience for most people. For me, I wanted to learn more, but at the same time, it's very tiresome to do 3 playthroughs, 4 if I wanted to get the true ending, and it's just too many playthroughs seeing the same stuff, even though you have access to new puzzles in New Game Plus, but the diversity is not enough. There's not enough diversity for you to feel like that you're not going through a chore of playing the same exact game all over again. So, unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend this. I think that this does not feel as a Silent Hill. As a horror experience, I wouldn't really place it very high as well, because, like I said, the action of the gameplay kind of takes away of the horror tension. But hey, feel free to share your own thoughts. Tell me if you disagree. Tell me if there's anything that you think that I have missed and that I should have shared more on. And yeah, feel free to just, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like or leave a dislike if you don't really agree with me. And write in the comments whatever you think I missed, and I hope to see you in the next video. So may music always be your life force.